Hello everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Mia Kim of Chunju University. Today, I wanna make a presentation about what I've researched up to now. The title of my research, my paper is, actually the original one was the analysis of the Caribbean women's writing through the trace of Jamaica Kincaid's writing implied in Annie John, but actually I changed the topic into an analysis on the counterfeit factors of the Caribbean female writers' writing through the analysis of Jamaica Kincaid's representative novel, Annie John. So please understand that part. Let me tell you about the contents. This is the layout. First, I will tell you about the characteristic background of the Caribbean women's writing. And then in the second chapter, I will tell you about the conflicting factors implied in the novel, Kincaid's novel, Annie John. This part will be divided into 3 steps. So in the first step, A part, I will tell you about friction Annie goes through, the protagonist of this novel, Annie, goes through with the social and educational system of colonial remnants. In the second step, so B part, I will tell you about the protagonist, Annie's diverse relationship igniting each individual's, especially Annie's, independence. In the third step, so C part, I will explain how Annie accepts the true African tradition and completely separate from the past. And then I will tell you about the conclusion of my research. Okay, let me move on to the next part. Okay, then from now on, I will tell you about the characteristic background of the Caribbean women's writing. Most of the Caribbean female writers have shown the characteristics of writing based on the history of the Caribbean. Their interest in Caribbean history is embodied in the image of their mother and motherland, and they pursue its origin in the relations to them. In Caribbean women's writing, the reproduction of mothers in particular is one of the interesting topics that have already been explored for a long time. The existence of mother in Caribbean literature is depicted as a phenomenon that reveals the power to colonize and the origin of the pre-colonial state and the complex and incomprehensible situation of the Caribbean itself. This research will analyze the unique characteristic of Caribbean female writing through the examination of Jamaica Kincaid's, one of the representative novels, Annie John. In the process of the examination, it will look into post-colonial issues and mother-daughter relations. The existence of a mother plays a role of the symbol of power, which is identified with the colonized home country, and the existence of daughter functions as a medium factor against colonial power. So for specific analysis, this study will examine the female protagonist, Annie's concealed sense of aggression, ambiguity, and hatred to her mother and her independent identity. The whole process of it will be preceded with the theory of Gina Whisker and Townsend Sherrill Gills. In addition, it will try to illuminate on the direction of Caribbean women's life journey through the analysis of the novel Annie John in the view of Timothy Chin and Brooklyn lens. Okay, let me move on to the next chapter. Before I move on to the next chapter, I want to explain this chart. This is the chart which symbolizes the conflicting factors revolved in this novel, Eddie John. The time Jamaica Kincaid was growing up was post-colonial Caribbean society, but it was still dominated by patriarchal society system and oppressing British education. This irrational social scheme ignited Annie's discontent, who represents Jamaica Kincaid herself. In addition, Annie's mother's ambiguous viewpoint on West cultural structure causes Annie to separate the attachment with her mother and her homeland, which symbolizes her travel of the past. So Jamaica Kincaid's writing mostly contain these Caribbean women's inner conflict and desperate longing for complete independence and freedom. Okay, let me move on. Let me go back to this part. So, in this chapter, next chapter, the second chapter, in this chapter, this study will show the meaning of true growth in colonial society and patriarchal-centered society in this novel, Annie John, through the growth process of a black child from Antigua. It analyzed the process of confusion and conflict in the post-colonial state seen in the novel Annie John through the metaphor of the identity of confusion. It focuses on Annie's diverse experience in the conflicted situation of diaspora. Okay, then let me explain more about this phenomenon. Okay, then let me tell you about the friction with the social and educational system of colonial remnants Annie goes through and experience. Much of Annie's confusion and adolescence stems from anger, hatred, and anxiety about being treated as a colony object, not being called their name. Education in Antigua is such an education that makes anything British seem holy and good, as Kincaid herself experienced. Like the story of Columbus' discovery of the West Indies, Jane Eyre, and Paradise Lost, colonial black children learned literature in the language of white criminals who had used the slaving blacks, and they were educated as a paradoxical process to strengthen the power. So in connection with the above, Kincaid asserts as follows: because the criminal's language contains only the good things about the crime, the criminal's language can only explain and express the act from the criminal's point of view. It does not contain the terribleness of the act and the injustice of the act, the shame and anger inflicting on me. That's the assertion of Kincaid. So, to understand more concretely the conflicting factors of Annie and her mother, it needs to bring up the issue of death in this novel. Annie, who is 10, thinks that only people she does not know die, but soon experiences the death of people around her and recognizes that death is very close to her. Annie witnesses her mother's friend's daughter dead in her mother's arms and experiences fear and unfamiliarity of death from a mother preparing for the funeral. The hand of a mother who bathed the dead child and put on a shroud is no longer the one which used to be friendly and intimate. The mother's hand brought love and happiness to Annie and also made the mother and daughter relationship beautiful and happy, turns into a hand dealing with death. The mother's hand now has the aspect of breakup and conflict. There's always a mother around the death and experience, which implies that she functions as a priestess in charge of death. From the point of view, death means betrayal and abandonment of motherhood. Tiffy claims about that like this. So likewise, the conflict factors causing Annie and her mother are the byproducts of the wrong political, cultural, and social structure. Okay, let me move on to the next part. The bond between Annie and her mother gradually begins to crack and break up. Annie wants a strong bond with her mother, but her mother gradually moves away from her. The episode of going to buy clothes with her mother reveals Annie's more serious feeling of separation. Annie chooses the same fabric as her mother's clothes, and she's proud of herself being identified with her mother. But her mother advises Annie not to copy her. Annie feels pain and pride at the same time, recognizing that her mother is moving away from her. This kind of thing is igniting her independence. I'm sorry. This rapid change of Annie and her mother's relationship begins when Annie starts to socialize with her friends. Annie's interest and love for her mother changes to Gwen, a friend of the same class. Gwen is a typical Caribbean woman, having swollen hair, gray skin, flat nose, wide lips, and soaring cheekbones. It represents Kincaid's own aesthetics on beauty. Kincaid rejects European-centered racist aesthetic standard, marginalizing Caribbean culture, and acknowledges the beauty of African Caribbean culture as the most beautiful and desirable norm. Annie's love for Gwen is so hot and passionate that it feels like the red rust covers the whole skin and is about to burst with happiness. It is explained like that. It is depicted like this in the novel. However, Annie's love for Gwen cools down as the new school year approaches. That is because Gwen is also a typical girl who obeys the norm of a patriarchal society. Annie starts to have a special interest in another girl having a red hair who has a totally opposite image with Gwen. The red-haired girl refuses the fixed and old-fashioned social order and lives a free life. She is rebellious, and her way of life stimulates Annie's sense of rebellion. So according to Cove, he says that this red-haired girl can be classified as a lost ideal type of person. And Nissen also claims that the red-haired girl plays the role of catalyst for Annie to be severed from the past relationship with her mother. Okay, let me move on. Let me tell you about the process of acceptance of a true African tradition and complete separation from the past. One day during the long rainy season, Annie is so sick without knowing what the specific disease is, and her parents take care of her. Annie's mother uses African tradition, a beer, and takes her to the. So Annie's mother is in the position of a middleman who does not reject Western Christianity, Western culture, and its educational methods and manners. So this is as if Antigua's religion shows a mixture of African tradition, like Obeah, and Christianity. On the other hand, Natchez does not follow various Western systems at all and tries to maintain the African culture and lifestyle, that her ancestors have kept. So it is not her mother, but her grandmother who helps Annie recover from her illness. So this proves that Annie identifies herself as a grandmother rather than her mother in the process of searching for her own identity. That's just very important message in my research. So this is the conclusion of my paper. So Jamaica Kincaid's novel Annie John presents the problems of gender and colonization related to the three generations of grandmother, mother, and daughter, and the ambivalence of motherhood. This study examined the process of Annie's complete separation from the past bondage through the aspects escaping out of the attachment of a mother and her homeland. Caribbean women's writing showed an inevitable relationship with mother and motherland, forcing them to follow such colonial culture dominated by British imperialism. So through the analysis of a new viewpoint of completely decolonized women, the protagonist like Annie, this study shed a new light on the hybrid culture of the Caribbean, which is mixed with Western culture and regional African tradition. So after all, this study thoroughly examined the absolute necessity of Caribbean women's independence and freedom through the analysis of Jamaica Kincaid's novel, Annie John. So it reached conclusion that the Caribbean women still dealing with cultural, historical, and social inferiorities of third world women have to unceasingly challenge and move forward to accomplish completely independent identity as a sound human being. This is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you so much.